Hello everybody, welcome to my presentation, Community Action, Intel, Mossad, Mob, and Gang Ops. Bobby Johnson, aka WASP Society, and Crazy Corpsman 22 presentation. So first we have the Economic Development Administration, which came up with the Community Action Partnership. Both were started under the Economic Opportunity Commission, something like that, EOC, in the 1960s. In Minnesota, our group is MNCAP. That's the Minnesota Community Action Partnership. Now, these originally were community action associations, and some of them states actually have it as that. But in Minnesota, it's Community Action Partnership. They rebrand a little bit here and there. Who started it? Well, you guys might know this person. That's LBJ, who signed the Economic Opportunity Act in 1964, the War on Poverty. And this guy, he's a big political guy as well, by the name of Sergeant Shriver. He comes from a big political family, and he's affiliated with Mayor Daley of Chicago, and a few others. You might know this guy too. This guy is none other than Saul Alinsky. Now, as you can see right down here, the community action model was modeled after Saul Alinsky, who, with help from the Ford Foundation, had come up with some models. Oh, that's going to be interesting. But he became critical of it. This guy, you should know if you're in Minnesota. Right? Their president has charged him with the responsibility of coordinating federal programs in these areas. And that is Vice President Humphrey, straight out of Minnesota. This guy you should know too if you're from Minnesota. Good old Al Quee. Al Quee actually spoke at the Minnesota Conference for One Minnesota back in, I think it was 07-ish. Yeah, and they did a whole thing about how awesome it was. Yep, he's the one that came up with the tripartite board, meaning that they have to have some business people and their elected officials, and then poor people. This guy is Mayor Daley in Chicago. Comes from the Daley family of politicians. Him and Sergeant Shriver are awesome. He tried to get Johnson, after he got done, to be Humphrey's running mate when Humphrey wanted to run for president, where he would be the vice president. He's also the guy that helped get JFK elected. He's the Irish mobster from Chicago who ran everything. He gets real interesting too, especially with the way that it all plays out. And this guy too, Adia Stevenson, I believe is the name, another political big hitter from the Chicago area. And they get really involved with the intel orgs too. So, really involved with Humphrey, Orville Freeman, LBJ, and those guys. This one here, Edith Green. Now, both Ada Stevenson, and then, or Dia, how you say it, and Mayor Daley also supported this gal, too. And she's the one that came up with another amendment, which was the creation of the tripartite structure. So her, and Quee were the two for that. And some of this comes right out of the Community Services Block Grant Training. In the 1980s, under Reagan, they switched it from the funding that they had before to Community Service Block Grants. And when they came up with the Community Action Partnerships, they also had them partner with local nonprofits. It gets real interesting. The Economic Development Administration, Community Action Partnership. Here's the way that it all works. Okay, under the block grants. You have the federal block grant, and then you have the state regulation, and then it goes down to the Community Action Agreement, their Articles of Incorporation, and the bylaws, and then they funnel it down to the different orgs. Minnesota is tied almost directly into the RDOs. You'll be able to see the outline of that here in a second. Because the RDOs end up falling almost along the same lines of the Community Action Partnership. There's a little bit of overlap, but here's the Community Action Partnerships, and each tribe has their own. So you have each one of these little dealios right here is a tribe. So those are the tribes, and they have their own. So here's the RDOs. Look at how they line up. Region 1 up here would be that area. And they do intersect a little bit. You know, like 2 would be right in here. And then you have 3 over here. Sort of cuts over, and then down in here. So they don't overlap exactly, but the RDOs partner with the Community Action Partnership to deliver some of their programs to DEED. Because they're the ones that do the workforce development, and the RDO gets the DEED funding for that. Who's all involved? Who sits on these boards? Funny you might ask. These guys also come up with the programs ahead of time, then they get implemented at the legislative level. You have the National Council of Nonprofits, the Parliament of World Religions, the National Council of Churches, the National Center for Family Philanthropy, and of course, the Council on Foundations. So you have the nonprofits, the foundations, and then family philanthropy. It's a big circle jerk. They all help each other out, and they all come up with the programs that then get implemented. It's interesting. Community action, gang, grassroots, political activism. The Rockefeller Foundation and Ford Foundation, they got together with this really cool 2 people, Mayor Daley from Chicago and Saul Alinsky. And they ended up creating up this really cool program that was with the Community Action Partnership and that, but they funded directly the Vice Lords, also known as the Conservative Vice Lords. So here you got their little symbolism, their little group there, and this is Bobby Gore, who you guys should know. So he got it started in Chicago. But of course, they didn't stay there. You had to replicate this. And remember, some of these guys were already involved in Minnesota. Saul Alinsky's one of them. He had as one of his orgs, just like the Woodlawn organization in St. Paul. I don't remember the name of the org that was in St. Paul, but he had one of them there. Okay, and then the Vice Lord Nation, the Conservative Vice Lord Nation, became the Lords of Islam. They got in bed with this guy, Paul Wellstone, to do grassroots activism. He decided he wanted to have them help out with his campaign against Senator Durnberger, I believe it was, or it's either Durnberger or Boschwitz. Maybe been Boschwitz. Anyway, one of those 2. So who did he get involved? You got the Vice Lords. You have Bobby Joe Champion. You have Sharif Willis. You have Spike Moss. Spike Moss was up here before, so he wasn't one of the ones that was dropped in here. You have Lisa Clemens. She was a cop who also tipped off the Vice Lords to the gang raids. Of course, you have Keith Ellison. Now, it's going to be key because Bobby Joe Champion worked with Keith Ellison at the Legal Aid Center defending the gangs, while Bobby Joe Champion also worked for the Attorney General. Keith Ellison, yes, he's Antifa, but he's also anti-racist action. In the 1980s, they brought up the gangs. You have their lawyers. Then you have Spike Moss, who's already here. The Way, City Inc. You have this guy, Freeway Ricky Ross, according to some of the bangers on YouTube who've been talking a lot about it. He was up here. Big U Henley was up here. So you have the Crips. You have the Vice Lords. Oh, there, Jerry McAfee, the street court lord. Right, he does the street courts with the FBI and make sure that the information gets to the cops that it needs to be, so that way he gets to decide who gets to go away and who gets to stay free. Lisa Clemens, same sort of thing, right? Now, Jerry McAfee and Lisa Clemens also get money from Bobby Joe and Community Action Partnership, along with their county contracts and their city contracts. Yes, they triple bill. Yeah, Sharif Willis in there too, partners in crime with McAfee. Oh wait, Don't remember this one? Yeah, he was here too. Willie Lloyd of the Vice Lords. Yep, in the 80s, they were all partying, hanging out together back when Bobby Joe was five-finger discounting stuff with his sister and stuff. That's not all. We had Iran-Contra. Because these guys ran the drugs for these guys. Yeah, Iran-Contra, the mob, and the CIA ops. So you have this guy, John Sabes. His family is the Sabes family. Robert Sabes is his daddy. And I couldn't find a picture of Rob. They ran one of the casino groups. I believe it was Gaming Corporation of America. And they ran a lot of the reservations and that for the activity for the mob. And yeah, these are the two guys that are most known to be affiliated with, though. Good old Bernie Madoff, and a lot of that was arms dealing, smuggling stuff. And you had Tom Petters, and Tom Petters even said, "This guy's the mob. He's going to put a hit out on me. He's the mob in Minnesota. It's the top guys." But you have a couple more here. This guy on the right, that's this gal's father. It's Robert Maxwell. He was really involved in Minnesota. They met with Governor Perpich quite a bit. In fact, they almost got an institute at the University of Minnesota called the Maxwell Gorbachev Institute. Mossad guy right there, and Mossad gal. It's so cool. Oh, and then you have Adnan Kagashi, another Mossad operative. He was involved in Minnesota, checking out the ethanol plants, and then with MJK Clearing, which ended up tanking in 2001. Stockwalk, yep, and that was, MJK Clearing was another arms dealing group right out of Minnesota. So, Mossad ops. And then you have the mob, you know, again, Sabes' mob, these two are Mossad. He may be a little bit Mossad too, but this guy up here, Lyle Berman, he's another mob guy. He ran Grand Casinos, and they had mob ties as well. Also, Native Gaming Corp also did out of Minnesota. But he started the World Series of Poker. The World Series of Poker also had Minneapolis Jim Meehan, who was known to visit the mob high-stakes gambling flower shop, Jerry's Flower Shop over north, where they framed Marvin Haynes. How would that happen? Well, some of these programs were funded in part by the Intel orgs. This guy had known Mossad connections, also connected to some Intel ops. He presented the fusion centers on the morning of 9/11 to the MPD. That's when it was scheduled. May have been pushed back a tiny bit. That's according to his article that he wrote talking about it with Perf and Target Corp. Of course, you have this gal. You might not recognize her. It's Andy Luger's wife. That's Ellen Goldberg Luger. And these two were intimately involved with Minnesota Heals. These are these groups that were funded right after the Tough on Crime, Murderapolis stuff. They actually made a whole model of the public-private partnerships, which we'll get to in just a second. And of course, you got the lady that loves the pedo symbols for liking little boys and girls, and she's right in the middle there. Not surprising, eh? But yeah, you had the Honeywell that helped fund the gangs, City Inc. in the way. You had Target doing the surveillance side of it. After the Tough on Crime, the vagrancy stuff, they helped fund the fusion centers in Minnesota. Their thing was the Target Downtown Improvement District in Downtown 100. See Marjan stuff on with the Unicorn Riot on that. And then you had General Mills Foundation. That's where this lady came in for Minnesota Heals. And then 3M as well. Well, other General Mills execs were meeting with Sharif Willis. I think it's pretty funny. Klobuchar is part of Minnesota Heals as well. Premium may have been sprinkled in there a little bit. But yeah, they created up these public-private partnerships to be pushed. They were doing it before, though. Okay, the criminal mob, Mossad CIA lawyers. So you have the criminal lawyers right there for the gangs. And then you have the Mossad lawyers. This is Andrew Luger. He got brought up here in the early 90s to help cover for not only the gangs, but the mob that's up here. Because the Birmingham Saves are starting to get in trouble. Robert Saves is like just happened to be paying off some city councilmen. They're women, but city council women. And then he got caught being in bed with La Cosa Nostra and a couple other crime families. Donald Trump even talked about it. Yep, so he was the cover guy for that. He covered for the kosher mob up here. And they were involved with the Irish mob as well, out in Chicago with the Daily Machine, right? So you got these couple right here. Well, this guy right here worked underneath this guy when he was Attorney General. As Attorney General, he ran cover for the mob and maybe some more because this guy is Mossad. Okay, his wife right here worked directly for him, alongside of him, and him. So you had, and he's known to have connections to some really weird Israel groups. Norm Coleman there, right? So you have Norm Coleman, Andy Luger, who brought Ellis into Israel, and then he got out of Nation of Islam and helped Luger start J Street PAC. Luger also ran front for a lot of the money laundering that's happened here in Minnesota. He waited till it got into the Huala system and got over to the terrorists that Mossad and CIA were funding before stopping it. Oh no, by the way, he let Kagashi run rampant with the everything too. So yeah, that all started in the 90s. You know, the Petters people even talk about it with the Sabes and whatever else. So yeah, so they got Norm Coleman here. Yeah, Skip Humphrey. This is James Coben. He's Mossad. And what he does is he teaches at Mitchell Hamline. And he teaches the counties on how to do arbitration. So that way, under arbitration, the county messes up. You get paid off. And then you get a gag order. His wife, Barbara Franzi. She's also a climate activist, but she was the Mossad agent in one of them inside of Skip Humphrey's office covering for Iran-Contra. And then, of course, you have the useless doofuses. Mike Freeman, who just happens to be the son of Orville Freeman, and Skip was a son of Hubert Humphrey. So both their dads were mobbed up too. But yeah, and then you got Mike Freeman there, and the big thing was big white men aren't going to rule the world anymore. But yeah, they were all mobbed up. So he's talking about the mob there, right? And then you have again the pedo lover Klobuchar, because you got the guys in the I like boys, little boys, and I like little girls pedo costumes. That's what that is. So yay! Iran-Contra cover up Minnesota. Of course, Wellstone. He actually did try a little bit to stop some of it. He got Sharif to speak in front of Congress, and then he was looking into the disappearance of Father Carney. In fact, right before his death, in the early 2000s, late 99-ish, right around that time frame, he was looking into the death of Father Carney. And of course, Father Carney had died in a way that the CIA said it would reveal methods and sources if they released it. And so the DFL requested all of his communications, and they didn't want him looking into the Iran-Contra scandal because it was still going on. And oh no, Kagashi just got caught with the stock walk stuff, you know. And so these two really wanted positions. They really want to start up something. And so, of course, Wellstone's flight that went down, he just happened to have a pilot that was a felon for wire fraud that shouldn't have been a pilot. And his other pilot was a crappy ground school instructor that happened to teach Zacharias Moussaoui. So you have intel-related guys there, and of course, he had to die. Why? Because then you can get to make up some really cool things like Camp Wellstone, the Wellstone Action Group, and Camp Wellstone. They use Alinsky's tactics to teach the kids how to become community organizers and never work a day in their life, but do it through nonprofits. The money funneling orgs, the mob, Mossad, and casino ops. So the first one here is the casino map, which just happens to correspond with the reservations, right? And here you have the community action partnerships. The reservations each get theirs. And here's the RDOs. So the money flows from the feds through the RDOs and community action partnerships down to the local levels. Why is this important? Because they automatically sit on the boards of these, and they're considered minorities, and they sit on the board of these because they're also businesses and religion. So they sit on the board of these, create the type tripartite structure. But now they're sort of over Wellstone, so they decided to rebrand. They kicked Wellstone's family out of the Wellstone Action and made it Repower. And recently, here they made up a new one that hasn't even filed with the SEC, the Groundwork Institute. And that's post-Hortman, because, of course, Wellstone's memory just was about over. So they had to tap something new with Hortman. And you have the people that came out of the Wellstone Action Group. You have Keith Ellison, Timmy Walls, and, of course, Peggy, the I Want to Be Two-Spirit Protecting Trans Kids Flanagan. And, of course, back to who decides here in Minnesota what they end up pushing through the institutes, through the RDOs and Community Action Partnership. You have the Minnesota Council of Nonprofits, Minnesota Council on Foundations, and the Minnesota Council of Churches. They push all the refugee stuff. They push the woke stuff. No, by the way, their corporations donate to the GOP too, the Economic Club, the bipartisan groups like that. But then they also have their foundations and nonprofits that then fund the leftist agenda. Well, thank you for watching. Hopefully you guys all have a great night.